One of the most common and annoying comments I get on my shorts or series where I talk about symbolism behind physical traits in anime is, oh, the author just wanted to make it red, don't read too into it, or it's not that deep. And I totally get that when you were in 9th grade English class and your teacher was explaining that the curtains were red to demonstrate this or that, and your friend Kevin leaned over and made the same joke that you're making right now, that it was super funny. But we aren't 12 anymore, and storytelling and visual media and things like movies, TV shows, or even on YouTube have become a massive part of our daily lives. And these things are arguably more important to recognize and understand than at any other point in history. And if there's any other points in this video that are interesting to you, let me know in the comments and I'll try to make a future video on that subject. Before I get into the why though, I'm gonna meet you halfway. Naturally, these things are not thought out 100% of the time. A super easy example of this is the lightsabers in Star Wars. Luke is given a peaceful blue lightsaber while the Sith has an aggressive red one, and that is intentional.
Good guys are green and blue, bad guys are red. That's just the way it works.
But then Sam Jackson walks in and wants a purple lightsaber so that he can see himself in the crowd.
Lightsabers are green or lightsabers are red. Yeah, but I want a purple one.
So yeah, sometimes it is deep and other times it isn't. That's just reality. However, these ideas weren't being taught to us because they were always on the mark, but rather they were trying to give us the tools to understand and create our own stories. They wanted us to think about what we were reading and watching. And if you aren't watching the flattest explosion fest of an action movie, then I can guarantee the writers had themes and motifs that they were trying to include. It won't always be in every moment, but every story has at least an overarching theme that the author is trying to express. More importantly though, they wanted to introduce you to these tools for your own storytelling. When you write something or make a video, you should be able to recognize and utilize a wide variety of methods of presenting what you're trying to get across. I mentioned lightsaber colors earlier, and I talked about this a bit in my shorts, but there is a shorthand to using colors, to saying that red demonstrates evil, aggression, and passion. It allows you to show and not have to tell the story about a character or a place in a very simple and understandable way. You can also look at things like The Matrix, where the entire movie is kind of this toxic digital green. This is a movie about cyberspace and not living in reality. So while green as a whole is often a sign of nature, this green isn't. It's uneasy, it's unnatural. It gives off this kind of nuclear energy vibe. It's as far from the idea of forestry in the natural world that we can really get. And I can guarantee that the whole movie being green is not just because they like the color green. So knowing how to use color can both help you to easily send a message to your viewers or to shape their feelings and emotions as they watch or read your material. Similarly, in Coraline, we see Coraline's upsetting reality made out in these dark and blue lights, while the other world is full of yellow and bright lights. These two places and lighting styles immediately change how you perceive every scene. There's an inherent depression in her normal world and this hopefulness in the other world. And the same thing can be said on a more macro scale if you look at the Harry Potter series, starting out much more bright and descending into darker lights as the emotional weight of the series shifts with it. And yes, there are plenty of dark scenes in the first film, but if you look at this image showing every frame in the franchise, there's a clear trend that follows the mood being shown. And for the most part, I think that a lot of people do understand this connection between the lighting being presented and how it affects the viewer's mood. But for some reason, once you talk about any other element of design, like the colors being used, that's where it becomes a sign that you're reading too deep into things and suddenly you lose people. And I don't really understand what the difference is in the minds of these people. You can even look at things like the shape of characters, especially in things like Disney and Pixar, as they tend to exaggerate these features. Rounded characters are more comfy, cute, and comedic, like Joy, Mike, and Mario. Square characters are strong, sturdy, and dependable, like Ralph, Sully, or Stoic. And triangular or sharper characters tend to be more dangerous or active, sometimes leaning evil or mean, but not always. You got Maleficent, Jafar, and Bakugo, as well as features like sharp teeth, claws, horns, and sharp ears that all kind of lean into that as well. And before we even get to the characters, before we see the color or the background, we have the framing of the shot. Are we doing an extreme close-up to help us understand a character's emotions? Are we angling the camera upwards towards them to make that character feel imposing or larger than life? Are we doing a Dutch angle to give a feeling of tension or fear? Or are we doing a dolly zoom effect to make you uneasy as it makes your sense of space feel off? As a creator, there are so many things to consider, from height to clothing to how people move to lighting and shapes and a million other characteristics in every single scene that guide how the story is perceived. And honestly, it's just too much. It is impossible for any writer or creator to completely control every element and consider every little thing that the viewer is going to be taking in. So while many parts might and probably do have meaning and intentionality behind them, a lot of them just won't. The more important things will likely get most of the thought put behind them, and lesser things just might not have the time to dedicate towards them. But here's the thing, it doesn't matter. It does not matter what the creator or any piece of media wanted to display or represent. What matters is what they do display and represent. Art does not exist unless it's experienced, and this is where intentionality ends and impact takes over. In a real-world practical example of what I mean, my grandma has a friend who is, let's say, from another time. A phrase I am using here to mean that she sometimes says some pretty offensive and racist shit without really realizing it. You know how 80-year-olds can be. Anyways, I brought a black friend over to my grandma's house when I was in high school, and her friend said the sentence, "Wow, your friend is actually a surprisingly nice boy." And while she intended that as a compliment, and definitely thought she had made one, what she was really saying subconsciously was that she was surprised because he was black, and that's how he took it as well. It does not matter what your intention is or what you're trying to say if the outcome is something wildly different. And sure, we can recognize the circumstances surrounding something, but that doesn't really change the result. So while a writer might intend for a scene to mean one thing, it can come across entirely different, especially if mismanaged, which is why it is so important to understand how to use symbolism effectively. The teachers in high school didn't really care if you understood that the curtain was red within the context of the story itself. They were trying to get you to understand that things can and do have meaning beyond what you put on the page. They were saying that you can make something red to get this meaning across. They're making sure that if you want to tell a story about something, you know some of the shorthands that can make it more digestible and engaging. And the last reason why we should overanalyze things is it's just fun to do. Learning and recognizing patterns in characters' designs or settings, or even how the frame of the shot moves, is just really rewarding to do. It's like the writing equivalent of finally learning how to throw a spiral or do a layup. It's fulfilling, it helps you participate in the field more actively, and it can help you make predictions about the story or the characters that are extremely satisfying when you get them correct. It further engages and immerses you in the world that you're partaking in, and I think that's kind of its own reward. So yes, people overanalyze the shit out of stories. Sometimes the meaning is intentionally there, and sometimes the meaning is implicitly there, but it doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is how the audience is going to interpret your work and understanding the tools to help get the actual message that you want to send to that audience. And that is why overanalyzing is both absolute bullshit and incredibly important. Thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, I hope you all stay excellent.